Thanks very much, Jeff. Next up is Robin Pope, who will be talking about starting paddling Sea Scout ship and his experiences with that. Robin?
Thanks, Bruce. Josh, can you go to the next slide, please? So I'm the skipper for Ship 957, which is based in Jackson County, North Carolina, very western tip of the state, and very tiny rural community. Our ship is about 3 years old, and we started with a great group of kids who had been in local Boy Scout troops. They'd all had a great experience there, all Eagle or Life Scouts who had a lot of experience on the water. And as they were aging out of Boy Scouts, wanted to continue in a scouting program. They considered venturing versus Sea Scouts, and Memorial Day weekend 2015, they chose to go with Sea Scouts. Next slide, please. So we considered what we wanted to do and chose on paddling for a number of reasons. We're a long way from the ocean, and driving a 10-hour round trip for a weekend of boating is not a real viable option. On the other hand, we are minutes to less than an hour from lots of mountain lakes and lots of world-class paddling venues. We're 35 minutes from the site where the 2013 International Canoe Federation World Championships were held. We're less than an hour from some of the best paddling instruction in the world. We're 15 minutes to some of the best beginner paddling instruction rivers in the world. We are close to lakes, and we considered sailing versus power boating, but anybody who's sailed on a mountain lake knows that can be a really frustrating experience. And when we thought about power boating, just the financial barrier to entry was pretty prohibitive. On the other hand, I had been a scoutmaster for several years. I had a lot of experience with paddling instruction, and the financial barrier to paddling was quite low, so they elected to pursue that. With that, you'd think we would have had a pretty easy way to go to start with. And if you'll show the next slide, please. The reality was we had a lot of challenges, and some of these challenges are things that have already been mentioned in previous presentations. Some of the scouts were about to enter college, and when you're 5 or 6 hours away from home, it's hard to participate in the program. The scouts that were staying locally as they entered college were working to pay for tuition and rent and food. And Walmart does not let you take the weekend off in order to go sailing. The ones that were still in school had lots of important outside obligations. They weren't just fooling around. They were working on their college applications. They were working on Eagle Scout. They were working in other meritorious programs, church, band, athletics. Next slide, please. Western North Carolina, you think of North Carolina as a warmer environment, but Western North Carolina gets cold in the winter. And unless we're putting scouts into dry suits, we have about a 4-month paddling season. Starts in late May or early June, and it's going to end in the next month or so. We had some pretty diverse scout experiences. Several of the previous presentations have talked about the importance of having a scout-led program. We had a couple scouts that had come from very adult-led programs, and trying to transition them and get them into the idea that they were responsible for their program was an interesting challenge. A big challenge we had was that I was the only one qualified in the unit to teach paddling. So I was not only teaching the scouts, but I was teaching the adults how to do it. That's a challenge because if you're on a 30-foot sailboat, one person can take care of a lot of people. I can't paddle your boat, though. Everybody's got to be able to paddle their own boat, and that did slow us down a bit. Next slide, please. So what did we do that was successful? The first thing we did was try to build some strong relationships with the local paddling community. And that allowed us to bring in extra people who had nothing to do with scouts, but were interested in boating safety, interested in boating instruction, and were willing to give up an afternoon or a weekend to help these scouts develop their skills. We also started out with the idea that we weren't going to recruit. We were going to develop a program very effectively, and we were going to show other scouts what we could do. So we had several instructional weekends working with local troops, trying to give them some boating experiences, and really focused on presenting a high quality program that shows that Sea Scouting is not just fun, but it's a great overall experience. Next slide. So this is a picture of one of our recent trips. We get a lot of people out on the water. Not sure if you can tell from the slide here, but everybody in this picture is smiling. We had a great day getting people out, showing them how to boat and getting them on the water having fun. Next slide, please. So as we were doing this, we were able to develop the talent and skills of the scouts who were originally in the ship and their family members. And that led us to start recruiting siblings, both of current scouts and female siblings of scouts in local troops. In our area, Boy Scouting is really the only scouting program. There's not an active Girl Scouting program. So women that wanted to be involved in scouts, either as youth or as adult leaders, really didn't have a great option. By bringing women into Sea Scouting, we were able to provide that venue for them and focus on family activities that were fun, but were still tied to the Scout Law and the Sea Scout Promise. And I want to take a moment here and just ask the question, how many of these are really specific to paddling? And I think that most of them are not. These are challenges and successes that any ship can have. I said that I can't get in your boat and paddle it for you. So we do have to build up scouting skills for paddlecraft pretty effectively. But that same challenge is going to be present if you're putting scouts on a laser or a sunfish. You might be able to put 2 scouts on there, but you're not going to have an instructor on each boat. Next slide, please. As we were running our program, we really tried to be flexible, focus on having fun, and focus on getting families out. I chose this slide because this was supposed to be a kayaking trip on the Tuckasegee River. Water level was supposed to be between 500 and 1,000 cubic feet per second, which would have been a perfect level for us. For the last 2 weeks before this picture was taken, it had rained every day. The water level was at about 3,000 cubic feet per second, so we had to change our plans entirely. But every person on here is smiling, having a good time. And even though we were not doing what we'd originally planned to do, by being flexible, focusing on having fun and being safe, everybody had a great time. Next slide, please. A couple weeks later, we were able to get on kayaks. If you look at Ship 957's Facebook page, you can see the video that this picture was taken from, and you can see Parker Smith out there surfing his kayak for the first time in his life. Again, focusing on fun, skills, and getting people involved and seeing what they can do in boating. Next slide, please. So I would argue that this has had some really good results. Despite the challenges that I mentioned, 3 of our original 6 scouts are still active. 2 of those that are not active have moved from the area. We've had steady growth in the ship, had steady growth in participation. One of our previous speakers mentioned that we try not to just get scouts, but to get potential scouts in. And every activity we've had in the past year has had people that were trying us out and seeing if they wanted to join, and generally they decided to. We've had a steady growth in skills, moving from lakes up into moving water rivers and beginning with some whitewater trips. The scouts are planning a 3-day Labor Day weekend cruise that's going to serve as a template for paddlecraft quartermaster cruises, and they are taking responsibility for planning our 2019 long cruise. Next slide, please. So some take-home messages. Any ship that's starting is going to have some significant challenges. Paddlecraft does have some unique challenges in terms of getting people into individual boats and having to ensure that each scout is developing their skills, but most of the challenges are the same as with any other craft. Our ship has succeeded because we really focused on providing a high-quality program, making use of the available resources we had. We tried to show other scouts what we could do and why Sea Scouting was fun, why it was a worthwhile program. We tried to be enthusiastic and patient and really take the long view. I think that if we had tried to jump in 2015 and just try to drive forward and really recruit and focus on numbers instead of focusing on program, I'm not sure the ship would be in existence right now. by focusing on the long view and focusing on developing the program and then bringing people into it, we've been very successful. And then the idea of following up with everybody. Anytime somebody contacts us, anytime somebody connects with us, we try to make sure that we're following up, sending thank yous to them, and trying to develop those relationships. Next slide, please. Those relationships, or some of those relationships are shown on this slide. So if you are interested in paddle sports, there are lots of things available. The Sea Scout website has a pretty strong paddle sports program toolbox. One of the biggest tools is the American Canoe Association. ACA is the gold standard for paddle sports education in the U.S. Sea Scouts and ACA have a memorandum of understanding, and we really encourage people to work with ACA instructors because they have specialized training to make sure that we're putting on a program that is both fun and safe. Lots of local clubs, outfitters, and liveries are going to be interested and willing to provide some support. The only way you know is to ask. So call them up, see what you can do. Some of them will volunteer, some of them may want some compensation, but you never know until you ask. And then how do you get equipped for this? Certainly speaking with clubs and outfitters, looking for donations of equipment, looking for used equipment is a great opportunity. But it turns out there are lots of scouts and people who approve of scouts working for companies that make paddle sports equipment. MTI Life Jackets, the director of marketing is a former Eagle Scout. They offer a significant discount below wholesale. Bellyak, Jackson Kayak, and Piranha Kayak all offer essentially wholesale pricing. Northwest River Supply offers programs for any nonprofit. And then the ACA website has lots of other things that are available.